I have received a possible emergency FEMA Region 3 alert. FEMA Region 3 consists of Washington, D.C., Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. This alert was sent to us by Senator Sheldon R. Songstadt, retired, of South Dakota State. This is Rev. Michelle Hopkins. Well, here is what the Senator's National Preparedness Research turned up. FEMA purchase orders for over $14.2 million for MREs and heater meals to be delivered to Region 3 by October 1st. FEMA purchase orders for 2 million pouches of emergency water to be delivered to FEMA Region 3 by October 1st. FEMA purchase orders for $13.6 million for MREs and heater meals to be delivered to Austin by October 1st. 9-week training course for UN peacekeepers in CONUS to learn urban warfare. They're learning urban warfare, and they need to learn English and U.S. weapons systems. We're having foreign soldiers learn our U.S. weapons systems. This has been going on since the 4th week of July for 386,000 troops to be completed by October 1st. $11 million in antibiotics to be delivered to FEMA Region 3 by October 1st, ordered by the CDC. The World Health Organization held their second emergency meeting in its history. The second meeting in its entire history to discuss MERS coronavirus. Determined a vaccine must be in place by October 1st. 2,800 MRAPs must be delivered to DHS by October 1st. No leave will be allowed for U.S. military from September 28th through November 5th. NORCOM yearly training for civil unrest is to be suspended until September 27th to be performed in northeast coastal areas. Date for release of QE3 report is to be moved to October 16th. All DHS agents must qualify with sidearm, shotgun, and AR-15 by September 28th. No mention of yearly less lethal qualification. The sporadic testing of GPS and communication satellites is coordinated for the very first time ever with a testing date of September 29th. POTUS mandates to FEMA and DHS concerning support for metropolitan communities dealing with the extreme climate change must be complete by October 1st. These mandates were issued during the last 3 weeks. Over 300 school systems in the U.S. have determined their 3-day kits for each school and 3-day kits for each student to take with them. All deliveries are scheduled for the month of September. All National Guard units will complete riot control and disaster assistance training during this year's annual 2-week training. All units must have their training complete by September 30th. Daily testing of emergency broadcast system to begin on September 25th and run through October 2nd. Eastern-based Coast Guard units to perform massive group training, usually performed in the Gulf, in the Virginia and Delaware areas. This is a 10-day training mission to begin September 26th. God, please help America. Sheldon R. Songstadt, Senator retired, South Dakota State. I echo your sentiments. I echo your sentiments, Senator Songstad. God help America. This is Rev. Michelle Hopkins. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. It is such an honor to be here with so many patriots. And as Jackie mentioned a minute ago, I grew up in Cuba under a strong military oppressive dictatorship. So as a teenager, I found myself involved in a revolution. I remember during that time a young charismatic leader rose up talking about hope and change. His name was Fidel Castro. And, we all followed him. We thought he was going to be our liberator. As a result of being involved in the revolution, I was imprisoned, I was tortured, but by the grace of God, I was able to leave Cuba on a student visa and came to the greatest country on the face of the earth. Went to Austin, Texas, got a job as a dishwasher and paid my way to the University of Texas. And then in 1959, when Castro took over, I went back to Cuba. And I got the shock of my life. That same man that had been talking before about hope and change now was talking about how the rich were evil, about how they oppressed the people, and about the need to redistribute the wealth. He began attacking the press, curtail freedom of the press, attacking religion, confiscating property. Then he began instituting socialized medicine and imposing wage and price controls, basically reducing everybody's salary to a least common denominator. As a result, productivity was destroyed, free enterprise was destroyed. To give you an idea, today in Cuba, the average salary is $14 a month. $14 a month. I remember during that time, also, he mandated that all public schools had to teach Marxist ideology. My mother was a 6th grade elementary school teacher. She refused to do so and she was fired for it. And she said, I would rather suffer the consequences that poison the minds of children with communist indoctrination. So I came back to the United States totally disillusioned, but glad and thanking God for the opportunity that this country offered me. And just I decided that I was in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and this is the land of opportunity, and with hard work and determination I could achieve any dream. And so within a few years after graduating from college, I had my own business in oil and gas exploration. And then in 1976, I was shocked again when I saw a government started in this country instituting socialist policies, which I very easily recognized because of my experience in Cuba. So I became very active in the Reagan campaign. I joined an organization called the Religious Roundtable, a Judeo-Christian group that was very instrumental in helping Reagan get elected. So when my son was 8, 9 years old, our conversation around the dinner table centered on politics every day. I remember over and over I would ask him, you know, Ted, when I faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to come to. If we lose our freedoms here, where are we going to go? There is no place to go. This is the bastion of freedom in the world. And this is why we have to fight to protect the freedom we have. You know, we have a responsibility to carry forth these ideals of freedom to our children and our grandchildren. I remember when my son was still in junior high, I introduced him to an organization called the Free Enterprise Institute. He began reading Milton Friedman, von Mises, Hayek, Adam Smith, Frederick Bastiat, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. And as he entered high school, he and 4 other kids under the Free Enterprise Institute started a group called the Constitutional Corroborators. They memorized the entire U.S. Constitution, and for the next 4 years, they gave approximately 80 speeches across the state of Texas, just talking about the free markets and the Constitution. Before my son left high school, he knew without a shadow of a doubt what his purpose in life would be. And that would be to defend freedom and the Constitution, to work for limited government and the free enterprise system. But you know, as we see what's happening today in this country, perhaps some of us could get this solution. I think the most ominous words I've ever heard was in the last 2 State of the Union addresses, when our president said, if Congress does not act, I will act unilaterally. Not much different than that or bearded friend that I left behind in Cuba, governing by decree, by executive order, just like a dictator like Fidel Castro. And you know, when I look at our heritage, that's a great heritage of this country, I am so proud to be an American. We live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. That is why I feel so offended when our president goes around the world apologizing for America and negating our American exceptionalism. But the truth is, this country is exceptional and unique in the world. You know, I feel that without a shadow of a doubt, outside of the Bible, the greatest 2 documents that have ever been penned are the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. And the reason those 2 documents have lasted for 230 years is because they were written on the knees of the framers. Men of God seeking wisdom from above. And those truths are as relevant today as they were 230 years ago. And you know, when we see the intrusion upon our liberties, when we see whether it is looking at our emails or listening to our telephone calls, or when we see the IRS targeting Tea Party groups, freedom-loving groups, because for their political ideology, I say we can remain silent no more. Silent no more.
Well, there's a couple of stories here that I want to share with you because I find them disturbing, and quite honestly, I didn't believe either one of them right away. And so I sent it up to the newsroom yesterday to have the Blaze do research on them and to find out. These can't be true, right? They both are. let's start first with the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has just issued a new list of extremists that should be watched. And on that, in fact, number one, past the Muslim Brotherhood, past Hamas, Hezbollah, number one, evangelical Christians. Evangelical Christians and Mormons, Catholics. I think Catholics coming in at number 8. Along with the Klan and Muslim extremists. Now I've missed all of those stories on those really bad Catholic bombings here in America. I've missed all of the fertilizer LDS bombs. I've missed all of those. I haven't seen the big evangelical cross burnings that have been happening. So maybe I've just been asleep at the switch. Now, what the Department of Defense is saying is, well, okay, this was just put together by one guy who was just giving some talks there at the Pentagon, and he just was, he was just doing his own thing. How many times does that happen with our military? All the time. They are just not, they're just not really into the chain of command thing at the Pentagon. If that is true, which I believe it to be, if that is true, that shows our military is in danger because it obviously is losing control of itself. Now, the tip-off on this stupid thing is he misspells a couple of things, right? He misspells Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda is like Osama bin Laden. I don't really know how to spell that because they keep spelling it like 600 different ways. It's like the pronunciation of gutter. It used to be Qatar.
It was Cutter for a while.
Yeah, Cutter. I mean, it's whatever. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of other spelling errors in this, isn't there, Stu? In the one that you found?
Yeah, the Mormons. You guys familiar with
Mormons?
Mormons?
Yeah, okay, I guess it's kind of like mermaids, the Mormons. Mm-hmm. Okay. Very deadly group.
The Latter-day Saints, Ladder.
No, that's from another one.
Mm-hmm. Is it?
Yeah. Now, that's story number 2.
Oh.
Now, you heard the excuse from the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask the Colorado State Patrol what their excuse is. This one, I came back and I could not believe it. We called for a verification, and yep. Let me give you the article. When it comes to freedom, things are changing fast and for the worse in America, and it's happening at accelerated speed here in Colorado. Not only are laws being written at Mach speed to regulate, tax, and restrict individual freedoms, but ideas are changing amongst the Colorado citizens. Local law enforcement, in particular, are being put at a new crossroads and are being positioned to make some tough decisions about their duties. They will very soon be choosing between enforcing constitutional rule of law and new laws which contradict our constitutional principles and which make criminals out of innocence. April 5th, 2013, blogger Stephen Ahle, A-H-L-E, received an email from Broward County, Colorado Undersheriff Ron Trowbridge. This is what the post read. I've recently received a letter from one of the law enforcement's finest. He had attended a seminar in which he was told to be on the lookout for Christians. The letter was written by an attendee, Ron Trowbridge, Undersheriff, Prowers County, Colorado. I'd like to thank the sheriff and the letter and the 25 years he has spent protecting the public in his county. Fears of reprisals from either the Colorado State Police and Homeland Security fail to stop this patriot from exposing what our law officers are being subjected to. Because of his bravery, we're able to get an inside look on how nefarious forces within our government are attempting to indoctrinate our law officers. This letter proves our officers cannot be intimidated, nor can they be turned on the people they serve. The people of Prowers County are lucky to have this man. Here is the letter, unedited, complete in its original form. Now, I read that and I thought, no way this is true. On April 1st, 2013, I was attending training hosted by the Colorado State Patrol. The training was from 12 in the afternoon to 4 p.m., and it covered two topics: sovereign citizens and outlaw motorcycle gangs. I was pretty familiar with motorcycle gangs, but since we often deal with the so-called sovereign citizen group, I was interested to see what they had to say. The group consisted of of police officers, deputies, and CSP troopers. There were 20 people in attendance. Trooper Mike Kluzinski taught a 2-hour section on sovereign citizens. He spent most of the 2 hours focusing on how, in his view, and apparently the view of Homeland Security, people turn to the sovereign citizen movement. Kluzinski started off by saying that there are probably some sovereign citizens in this room, and gave a generalized list of those groups that have sovereign citizen views. Among the groups Kluzinski had listed were those who believe America was founded on godly principles. That would be me. Christians who take the Bible literally. That would be me. And fundamentalists. I don't know what that means exactly, but I think that might be even me. Kluzinski did not explain what he meant by fundamentalist, but from the context it was clear that he was referring again to those who took the Bible literally or, quote, too seriously. While Kluzinski emphasized that sovereign citizens have a right to their beliefs, he was clearly teaching that the groups he had listed should be watched by law enforcement and should be treated with caution because of their potential assault to law enforcement. Kluzinski explained that why he believed these groups were dangerous, saying they were angry over the election of a black president. I'm having a hard time putting that all together. When someone in the group suggested the failing economy was probably much more to blame, Kluzinski said those who are not going along with the changes in America will need to be controlled by law enforcement. Even later, he was questioned by some of the troopers present, and he questioned back and asked if they were willing and prepared to confiscate illegal weapons if they were ordered to do so. His assignment with the Colorado State Police was as an analyst for the Colorado Information Analysis Center. It is funded by Homeland Security and run by the Colorado State Police. Kluzinski says he gets his information from the Department of Homeland Security. He said he was leaving the CSP at the end of that week to begin his new career with the Department of Homeland Security. Undersheriff, Prowers County Sheriff's Office. As I said, I sent it upstairs to the newsroom when I got it. And I think my subject line was, "This can't be true. Please dismiss or verify." Yesterday afternoon, we verified that that is true. This is not something new. And if you believe it to be accidental, you are foolish. In Missouri, it was just an accident that these groups were listed. Ron Paul, Tea Party members, people who had the snake flag. That was just a mistake. That was in Missouri State Police. We've seen it over and over again. We've seen members of this government refer to people as terrorists who are Tea Party members. We have seen celebrities say that Christians are as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than Al-Qaeda. We've now seen it in the Department of Defense. But that was just one guy. That was an accident. He was just flying solo on that. And now the Colorado State Police, from a guy who's leaving to go to the Department of Homeland Security. I ask you if you're a police officer. I ask you if you are a sheriff. I ask you if you are a service member to make your decisions now, because it will be a slippery slope. Have you ever listened to Tea Party people? Have you really listened to them? Have you listened to what they're saying? Have you ever interacted with them? If you're a police officer, I can guarantee you that if they've ever had a rally in your town, you've not had a problem with them. I can guarantee you, if you're honest, even if you disagree with them politically, you have seen a group of people just exercising their First Amendment right to assemble and to speak their mind. And they most likely have treated you with uber respect. And they've treated your town. They've treated its parks. And they've treated our country and our history with respect. And you compare that to Occupy Wall Street, and you compare that to what happened by the labor unions in Wisconsin. You make your decision. Are Christians who believe in the Bible, are they extremists? Are Christians who believe that this country was founded on godly principles, are they extremists? You can disagree with it, but to believe that they're an extremist makes you an extremist because you're disagreeing with historic documents. You're disagreeing with the writings of the founders, their own words. So you may disagree with them on why they founded the country, but you would be the extremist if you're denying reality. Sheriffs, police officers, your best friends have always been the law-abiding citizen. And those people who would never have thought of calling you pigs or anything else.
All right, so Obama's about to launch World War III. I believe it's already started. And this is all on the heels of the massive scandals, too many to count. I mean, honestly, I don't know what I'm going to wake up to tomorrow. Are we going to get a major headline that Obama raped 15 chambermaids at his hotel stay while he was in Europe helping to orchestrate massive bailouts for the European Union? I honestly don't know. All I know is that we've had scandal after scandal, Benghazi, the IRS scandal, the fact that he's directly lied to our faces regarding the wiretapping, not just of the Associated Press, but innocent Americans, the surveillance state, all of this total bullshit, total lies. But this is all about war, and this has been the intention from the very beginning. Just take a look what's happening in Syria with a very violent, specific world war that's being fueled and funneled by the United States of America. They've been trafficking weapons. That's what Benghazi was. What do you think the whole death with Christopher Stevens and the staging of that event on September 11th? They expected us to believe that that was a coincidence, that it happened on September 11th and that they weren't trafficking weapons of war to the Syrian terrorists linked to Al-Qaeda. That's the liberalization and democratization that the United States is helping to implement overseas, so that they can continue a continuous destabilization effort in that part of the world for oil, for the blood money that fuels and lubricates like a gigantic maximum-sized condom the economy here in the United States. So these bankers can fly their helicopters and land on the Bank of America building as they accept your money, as we are sacrificing ourselves, our livelihoods, our family, our children, literally to Satan. Like, here, take my newborn, Satan. Here you go, Obama, kiss a baby. So I don't know what's going to happen next. All I know is that this is about war. This is about Western influence and Western power aggressively entering the god-awful, most dangerous, aggressive, insane war that I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime. You know, we learn about World War I and World War II, and, you know, we get these chicken shit wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's just been touching the surface. Because this next war is going to be biological, nuclear terror. There's already a cyber war occurring, which is why these companies like Palantir and these companies everybody's railing against right now, people like Snowden, are leaking to the public is such a big deal. Because it's a technological war, but this, of course, works in tandem with the physical war. This is violence and terror at a whole new scale. This is the Patriot Act on steroids. It really is unbelievable. So count on it. Count on it. Again, I don't know what we're going to wake up to tomorrow. Could be Obama raping 15 chambermaids. It could be him launching himself for a new Mars landing. We really don't know. We just know what the agenda is. Lie straight to the American people's faces as you take them to war and confiscate all their wealth, which they've done a fantastic job. Trillions and trillions of dollars stolen over the past few years, selling the idea that, you know, there's going to be change and, oh yeah, great, Obamacare for everybody, even though most Americans don't even know what Obamacare is or how it actually affects their life or how it actually benefits them. All we know is that we're dealing with the debt problem here that the government says don't look at, don't touch it, don't worry about it, we don't really need to address it. Yeah, you'll get your Social Security or not. Or not. Just like in Greece and in Europe, the riots in the street where they say, hey, we're not going to pay you. Oh yeah, you've been working for 50 years, but we can't afford to give you your luxurious pension while they sail off in their yachts, while they sail off in their private planes. That's the situation we have here in the United States. So the reset button, the massive reset button, which always occurs throughout history, you know, we see this with the rise and fall of empires, is war. That's how they reset everything financially. So that's what's on the Obama agenda as he sits in the war room, getting all greedy about his upcoming book deals post his second 4-year term. That's what we have coming. War, death, destruction, and to a great extent, could absolutely be the Armageddon. Could be the end. In fact, maybe Jesus Christ will come down himself and save us. Because you know what? We need a Jesus Christ right now. We need somebody to come and save this fallen, God-forsaken, sinful world in which we live. I'm Christopher Green. Please get this message out everywhere you can. Subscribe to me on YouTube at cgreen34, Facebook at Greenwave TV. Follow me personally at Twitter at Greenwave and get it out to the viewing public. Peace.
Those who control the United States government are up to something big. In this video, we're going to give you a glimpse of what's going on. We're going to present a collection of evidence from mainstream sources, all of which will be listed in the description below, And then we're going to connect the dots. The unified picture that you'll see once those dots are connected will be terrifying for some people, especially if you've never been exposed to this kind of information before. But that's not the goal of this video. The goal of this video is to motivate you to take action, and quickly. But that's only going to happen if you understand what's really at stake. Over the past decade, the US government has been radically transformed. These transformations began with the Patriot Act passed by Bush in 2001, and they were further consolidated by Obama with the NDAA of 2012 and 2013. The contents of these laws were ominous warnings of what was coming, but for the average American, the changes that were taking place had little effect on their lives. The introduction of the Department of Homeland Security and the invasive new policies of the TSA and airports were uncomfortable, but for most of the population, it wasn't worth resisting. We heard stories of the government listening to people's phone conversations and searching houses without warrants, but this was all behind the scenes and it didn't really affect the population at large, so the outcry was limited. Occasionally, the mainstream media mentioned the extraordinary rendition and torture of suspected terrorists in military prisons, but of course these political pundits did their best to convince you that this was all justified and necessary for your security. Then Obama came onto the scene promising hope and change, but it didn't take long for him to start showing his true colors when he renewed the Patriot Act and backed out of his promise to close Guantanamo. When Obama signed the NDAA giving the military the power to detain anyone, including U.S. citizens, indefinitely and without trial, and when he claimed the right to kill U.S. citizens without trial domestically or abroad, there was some outrage, but this outrage faded as new headlines pulled your attention away. On the surface, it might have started to seem like none of this was going to affect your life, so you put it out of your mind. If you were paying attention, you might have noticed that things were changing little bit by little bit. Cameras started appearing everywhere. The police began to be militarized, and drones began to patrol the skies domestically. But behind the scenes, something even bigger was afoot. Biometric information began to be collected from nonviolent protesters when arrested, from all immigrants entering the country, from school children without their parents' permission, and even from the public at large without their knowledge. The government has been collecting that information, compiling it into the largest biometrics database in the world. This database, referred to as NGI, will be online in 2014. These laws have been building the mechanisms for a totalitarian police state piece by piece, and now they're attempting to put the final measures in place. The new proposed immigration bill, called the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act, which is up for debate this summer of 2013, adds the two final elements. The first is a provision for a federal employment database that all workers will have to be approved through in order to get a job. This database will tie into other government databases at the discretion of the DHS, and the DHS is given the authority to unilaterally increase the identification requirements at will, and to demand that these standards be enforced as a condition of employment. What this means is that once this is in place, if the DHS decides that all ID cards must contain iris scan information and fingerprints, you'll have to give it to them or you won't be allowed to work. This in itself is a major power grab, but the full implications of the NGI database combined with this new employee identification system goes far beyond the workplace. In the immigration bill, there's a provision to set up a biometric scanning system in all international airports for departures. This system, which is proposed to roll out over the next 6 years, is initially just targeting immigrants. But once the system is in place, it would be trivial to start using it for the entire public. Such a switch wouldn't even need to be announced, since developments in biometric technology enable identification from a distance. They can do this with software connected to security cameras using facial recognition, infrared iris scanners, and even the rhythm of one's walk. Identification by one's unique patterns of movement, referred to as gait recognition, can even be used with drones. Once the biometrics verification system is set up at all ports of entry and departure, connecting this to the NGI database, existing surveillance cameras, and domestic drones to track the movements of ordinary citizens anywhere and everywhere, including wilderness areas, could happen without any outwardly visible changes and without any new laws. One of the most significant hallmarks of a police state is the establishment of systems to control who can leave a country. Such systems are often used to prevent political dissidents from escaping. This is often combined with intensive surveillance internally, both of communications and personal activities, and a brutal police force that operates above the law. Never in history has any dictatorship in the world had a system of surveillance, tracking, and exit management as sophisticated and powerful as the one the United States is about to finish setting up. Never. The Soviets had elaborate borders with double barbed wire, minefields, and guard towers, but none of this compares to a border patrolled by high-tech drones linked to the world's largest biometric database, with biometric scanners at every point of entry or departure. If they get this through, they will have truly outdone George Orwell. But the government would never abuse this power, would they? After all, America is the world's greatest beacon of hope and freedom, right? Well, the fact that the US government has already established a massive and secretive no-fly list, and the fact that anti-war activists have already been placed on this list for political reasons, should be considered a warning sign. In its current form, it's already impossible for citizens to find out if their names are on the list, and there's no process for getting your name removed from the list. What happens when the no-fly list becomes the no-leave list? So here's the real question. Do you trust the US government with this power? Do you actually believe that their primary goal is to protect you? If so, you haven't been paying attention. In 2013, we've been given a little glimpse of what's coming to America. In the Dorner case, we had a man accused of murder and condemned by the media as guilty based on a typed manifesto that he had supposedly written, even though there was no real evidence that Dorner had written the manifesto at all. A nationwide manhunt was put into motion. Whole highways were roadblocked and cars were searched. Police moved through neighborhoods searching hundreds of houses without warrants, and drones were said to have been deployed to hunt for him. And in the end, the police intentionally set fire to the building that he was supposedly hiding in, burning the man to death. The police initially denied that they set the fire, but later they were forced to admit that they had, due to a police scanner audio that got out to the public. And they got away with it. No one in the mainstream media or the government even blinked. Then we saw the Boston bombing case where two suspects were hunted down with equally tenuous evidence, even though photos from the event showed a number of individuals that were clearly involved. These other individuals were never mentioned by the authorities or the mainstream media. All attention was placed on the Tsarnaev brothers as if they were already proven guilty. The manhunt to catch these two boys was unprecedented. The DHS rolled down the streets with military-grade armored vehicles, searching house to house with no warrants, instituting an improvised form of martial law on the fly, just like that, because they could. The Tsarnaev brothers were finally caught, and they were shown in footage being arrested alive and well. Yet somehow, hours later, they were both shot full of holes. The older brother died, the other was left unable to speak, and the government and the mainstream media were silent. But the story didn't end there. Ibrahim Todashev, a friend of the Tsarnaev brothers, was brutally murdered by the FBI just weeks later. He was shot 6 times in the body and once in the back of the head. Murdered in cold blood, execution style. Todashev was unarmed, but the agents claimed that he attacked them. It's hard to imagine what an unarmed man could do to deserve a bullet in the back of the head. All of this establishes a new precedent, where the US government chases down suspects with militarized manhunts, instituting martial law on a whim, and acting as judge, jury, and executioner in the field. They kill with impunity based on flimsy or non-existent evidence, all with the support of a mainstream media circus that televises the whole event for your entertainment. This in itself is a chilling shift in tone, but believe it or not, there's more. A Department of Defense document entitled Internment and Resettlement Operations, also known as FM 3-39.40, was leaked this year, revealing detailed plans for the establishment of military internment camps within the United States. The document clearly calls for the collection of social security numbers, meaning it will be used for U.S. citizens. And it even has diagrams for 3 different types of camps that are to be implemented. These diagrams show interrogation rooms, guard towers spread throughout the facilities, and double barbed wire surrounding the camps. We covered this document in detail in our video entitled Leaked Documents, Military Internment Camps in the U.S. to be used for political dissidents. But wait, there's more! The Department of Homeland Security has recently gone on a bullet buying spree, purchasing over 1.6 billion rounds in just a few months. And even after the mainstream news started covering it, the DHS ordered more bullets. A large percentage of these bullets are hollow points and buckshot and cannot be used by the military. And the DHS only operates domestically. The DHS claims these bullets are to be used for training purposes, but anyone who knows anything about guns knows that you don't use hollow points for training. Hollow points are much more expensive than FMJ. Furthermore, this is more ammunition per DHS officer than US soldiers have been using in the war. In parallel, we had Senator Coburn release a paper about the wasteful spending in the DHS, in which he pointed out a bizarre training exercise where the DHS practiced shooting civilians who were disguised as zombies. Coburn focused on the spending aspect, but if you watch the actual footage and put it into context with everything else, the real purpose of these training exercises is much more disturbing. DHS officers are being conditioned to fire on unarmed civilians. The zombie makeup is just a smokescreen. Believe it or not, this is only a fraction of the evidence that we can present here. There is much more that you'll find if you do your own research. As outlandish as this picture may look to you if this is the first time you've encountered this information, the reality is that from a historical perspective, nothing we're showing here is unusual at all. Countries slip into totalitarian dictatorships all the time. You've just been conditioned to believe that it could never happen in America. But it can happen in America. And it is happening. It's happening right now. There are 3 ways of dealing with what you've just seen. You can pretend that this is all a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but to do that, you'll have to ignore the extensive documentation given from mainstream sources. Some might call this skepticism, but the more accurate term is willful ignorance. Option number 2, you can cower in fear and do everything in your power to avoid attracting the attention of the government. Of course, that's your prerogative, but what are you going to say to your children and grandchildren when they ask you what you did when this went down? Or, option number 3, you can fight to stop this. The powers that be have an Achilles heel, and that's the enforcers. These DHS officers are your fellow Americans. Most of them are not evil. They're just misinformed and perhaps a little brainwashed by their training. You can reach out to them, make friends with them, show them this information. You can reach out to police and military, to current serving and veterans alike. Make them understand what's coming. Make them realize that they've been tricked, that they are being used to destroy their own country. If the powers that be lose control of their enforcement arm, it will be game over for these criminals. Now, you may not know anyone in the armed force, but you can still help by getting this message to as many people as possible. Post this on Facebook, on Twitter, on your blog. Share it with your friends via email. Download these videos and hand them out on DVD. The more people we reach, the more likely it is we'll reach someone in a chain of command who's in a position to stop this. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to Storm Clouds Gathering on YouTube. For updates and bonus content, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/StormCloudsGathering. On Twitter at Collapse Updates. On Google+, you can find us by doing a search for Storm Clouds Gathering, and our website is stormcloudsgathering.com.